All right, let's dive in. If you're getting ready for your O-Levels Pakistan Studies paper, you are in the perfect spot. Today, we are unpacking one of the most important and, frankly, one of the most complicated periods in Pakistan's history, the era of President Ayub Khan. It's a decade that promised so much, but, well, the reality was a whole lot messier.
You'll always hear this era called the Decade of Development. And sure, on one hand, that's true. But on the other hand, was it a decade of dictatorship? That's really the big question we're going to tackle. We're talking about a time of huge economic growth, but it happened while political freedoms were shrinking. So how do you even begin to balance those two things? Let's figure it out.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the contradictions that kind of set the whole thing up. Then we'll dig into Ayub's vision for building a new Pakistan, check out the unique political system he created, pinpoint the exact turning point where things started to go wrong, and finally, we'll see how the whole era came to an end.
Okay, Section 1. To really get why a military general was able to just take over, we first have to understand the chaos that was happening right before he stepped in. We're going to explore the contradictions that came out of Pakistan's really turbulent first few years.
You know, the first 11 years of Pakistan's life were just rocky. The country was dealing with some serious political instability, governments were changing all the time, and then you have the tragic assassination of Liaquat Ali Khan back in '51, which left this huge power vacuum. This chaotic scene basically opened the door for a strong man, someone who could promise to bring back order. And that someone was General Ayub Khan.
So, Ayub Khan makes this big promise to bring order out of chaos, and his number one priority? The economy. In this next section, we're going to look at all the ambitious reforms that earned his rule that famous name, the Decade of Development.
Now, just look at how fast things started moving on this timeline. I mean, within just a couple of years, his government kicks off major land reforms, signs the super important Indus Water Treaty with India, securing the country's water supply, and gets big industrial projects going, like the oil refinery in Karachi. This was a massive top-down effort to completely reshape the nation's economy.
And the crown jewel of his economic plan was something called the Green Revolution. The goal here was pretty straightforward: make Pakistan completely self-sufficient when it came to food. So what did they do? Well, they started breaking up these huge estates owned by powerful landlords and giving land to the people who actually farmed it. The government also poured money into big projects, like building dams for irrigation and giving out loans so farmers could get wells, better seeds, and modern tools. The plan for industry was just as ambitious. As you can see, Ayub's government got big loans from Western countries to build up new industries. They created state-run companies, signed new trade deals with neighbors like Iran and Turkey, and they brought in some really clever policies, like the export bonus scheme, which, put simply, gave companies a financial reward for selling their products overseas.
Okay, so the economy seems to be humming along, and now Ayub turns his focus to politics. And this, my friends, is where things get really, really interesting. He built a brand new political system from the ground up, one designed to keep all the power in one place and ensure stability. But, as you'll see, it came at a huge cost to democracy. And this system was called Basic Democracies. It was different. Instead of everyone voting directly for the president, the public elected 80,000 local officials, and they were called Basic Democrats. Think of them like an electoral college. They were the ones who then voted for the president and the national assemblies. Now, Ayub argued this was a better fit for Pakistan, but his critics, they saw it as a clever way to control who gets elected and to limit the power of a direct public vote.
And this slide just lays out the power shift perfectly. The 1962 Constitution completely tossed out the old parliamentary system and brought in a presidential one. All the executive power, which used to be shared with a prime minister, was now all in the hands of one person, the president, Ayub Khan himself. He was now the head of state and the head of government. That's an immense amount of power for one person to have.
For a while, this whole system actually worked, or at least it seemed to. The economy was growing and political opposition was kept in check. But by the mid-1960s, you could start to see the cracks forming. This section is all about that turning point, the moment when the challenges to Ayub's rule really began to pile up.
The 1965 presidential election was a huge moment. The opposition parties, who were usually fighting each other, all united behind one incredibly powerful and respected candidate, Fatma Jinnah, the sister of the nation's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Her campaign really fired people up. In the end, Ayub Khan officially won, but that win came through his controversial basic democracy system.
The opposition cried foul, they said the election was rigged, and this whole episode seriously damaged the legitimacy of his rule.
And right on the heels of that messy election came the 1965 war with India over Kashmir. The war itself kind of ended in a draw, but the peace deal that came after, called the Tashkent Declaration, was an absolute public relations disaster for Ayub. A lot of Pakistanis felt that he had given away everything they'd gained on the battlefield when he sat down at the negotiating table. It was seen as a total national humiliation.
And that feeling was perfectly captured by Ayub's very own foreign minister, a guy named Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He actually resigned in protest over the Tashkent deal, and he was brilliant at tapping into that widespread public anger. Bhutto's powerful speeches demanding to know what happened behind closed doors just fueled the opposition and set him up as a major political rival. So the key takeaway here is that the dissent wasn't just quiet grumbling anymore, it was getting loud and organized.
And that brings us to the final act. All of these things, the political anger, the economic problems, the regional tensions, they all came together to create this perfect storm that would ultimately bring Ayub Khan's decade of power to a dramatic end.
So let's quickly break down the main reasons for his downfall. First, that anger over the Tashkent Declaration, it never went away. Second, more and more people saw his basic democracy system as just plain authoritarian. Third, and this is super important, people in East Pakistan felt completely left out, believing that all this economic growth was happening in the West Wing and not reaching them. And finally, there was this growing feeling that all the new money being made was ending up in the pockets of a very, very small group of people.
And that feeling was captured in this incredibly powerful slogan, the 22 families. His critics used this term to argue that all the benefits from the decade of development had gone to a tiny elite group of families, just 22 of them, who they claim now controlled about 2/3 of the entire country's industrial wealth. Whether the number was exact or not didn't matter. It became this potent symbol of inequality that really fueled public anger.
The final years were just a rapid collapse, as you can see here. After Bhutto resigned in '66, the opposition just kept gaining steam. By 1968, you had massive protests led by students and workers that brought the entire country to a standstill. The pressure was just immense. Facing a total breakdown of the system, Ayub Khan resigned in March 1969. He handed power over to another general, Ayub Khan, and just like that, the era was over. And this brings us right back to our big question from the beginning. The Ayub Khan era really highlights this fundamental tension. It shows that, yeah, you can get incredible economic progress under an authoritarian government, but it also forces us to ask, what's the real cost of that development when it happens without letting people participate, without basic democratic freedoms? That's a huge question to think about, especially for your exams.
We really hope you found this breakdown of the Ayub Khan era helpful for your revision. If it was, do us a favor and hit the like button, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, Spot Work Learning. We've got more explainers coming to help you absolutely crush your Pakistan studies exams. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck with your studies.